So the last time I worked on this, I made some great progress. Took a day off to go help out Brandon. We went and got him a new project car, so hopefully you watched that video, or will see that video soon. So we had gotten the dash and everything in and starting to figure out where things need to be rerouted to for the L, or the pre-facelift dash, whatever you want to consider this. So, but I overlooked one thing. If I would have done these two things before starting the wiring, I could have left the dash in at this point. But I forgot to run brake lines and fuel lines. So we will be now taking the dash back out. Not a big deal. Maybe move some of the wiring around just so we can get it fitted nicely. But I got to run all new brake lines to the rear. And then I'm going to use the factory section of fuel lines from the front to about mid-body here roughly. Basically, just before where they go up through the floor, I'll probably, or down through the floor, I'll probably cut them just before that, and then we're going to be running nylon line back to the fuel cell once we get that. So that's kind of my plan. So I'm going to get this dash ripped out of here, and I will catch back up once we're ready to start playing with brake lines. So dash is back out, and I got myself a game plan put together, and we are rewriting the script. I had actually thrown the front section of brake line in for the rears. This is the proportioning valve of some sort, and we go through the firewall down here and go back to the rear. But after sitting here staring at it for a little while longer, I've decided to make this look a lot cleaner because, well, why not? We've already put this much work into it, and I already need to run brake lines to the rear anyway, so whether they're from here or possibly over here, what does it matter? So I'm actually gonna remove this from the engine bay and relocate it to the rear of the car, and then split the brake lines and still utilize it. I'm just gonna put it underneath the car in the rear where the gas tank used to be, because that's just a big old open hole. So, and then that's gonna help clean up the engine bay a lot, because the brake lines are one of the ugliest parts of these engine bays. Let alone it's hard to do much with the wiring. I know people do. There's a lot of things I could still do with this wiring. And besides, the engine's not even in here, so we don't even really know. But, moral of the story, we have a pretty nice looking engine bay. So, might as well let it look nice. So I'm going to take this back out of here, rerun all new brake lines. And I'm still going to utilize the factory fuel lines, but they're going to get cut somewhere back here because I'm going to be running nylon line back to the fuel cell once we set all that up. So, since we also will not be running an evap system because this is a track car, we have an extra slot here, and they actually put a extra one here that you can cut out, so we're going to utilize that and run our brake lines through there. So, and we're going to then run our brake lines obviously down the driver's side of the car with the fuel lines. The fuel lines will run on top, I believe. It's been a while since they've been in, and I haven't looked at one of the other cars, so I believe they run on top. We'll find out here shortly. And then I'm going to run the brake line down and around the floor. There's a little hole. I can go through that hole, through here, and then when we get back to the back of the car here, we're actually going to make a new hole right here for a grommet, and we're going to run them through there, and then that'll follow the frame rail back to where I'm going to mount the proportioning valve for it. So I think that should help clean it up quite a bit, and I just like the idea of it. I'm also going to run the right front brake line down, and this used to have a manual clutch cable in it, so there's a hole underneath the brakes master here. So I'm actually going to run that brake line inside and then up and over the trans tunnel, and then come back out where the AC used to drain, and then that'll come right down the frame rail and over. So you won't even see that, so that'll clean that up also. So I think this is going to be a great idea. It's no more brake line than what would have been here. The only difference is that's going to be mounted farther back, and I don't see why it would matter being there or back there. So let's have some fun. got myself a good base that we're going with here. So these lines are nice and run inside there with the fuel lines. Working on getting them all nice and routed down the side and then out. And I got the proportioning valve, actually, probably just come through here. And it's still gonna be a little tricky to see, I guess. I'll still have to go under. But proportioning valve is, around there. Kind of hard to see. My flashlight died, so I got no light. But got that mounted pretty central in there. So now it's just a matter of running some brake lines down and around to the rears, and then duplicating the same in the front. But the fronts will just run right off of the master. So get those wrapped up tomorrow. The brake lines will be complete, and then we can start actually finishing out the wiring for the final time here. So get the dash in it and start doing some splicing to make things work. So making good progress. Got all the brake lines run. Actually very happy with how they turned out too. The rear line snake around there, in with the fuel lines very nicely, and then I ran the right front one into the old clutch hole, or the old manual clutch cable hole, back and around to where the HVAC drain used to be and whatnot. So very hidden, cleans up the engine bay a lot, because this is already a non-ABS car, so I don't really got to worry about much. So very happy with how it cleans it up. Don't have the proportioning valve up here, have that hidden in the back. I'll crawl under there quick and show you. But got the rear lines ran here. They come back up and around the subframe. I gotta go pick up some fasteners for them. I don't really have any laying around currently, so and right under here, right there, we have our factory proportioning valve. Still gotta kind of route these and hang them up better along the frame rail, but brake lines are coming out of the factory fuel line holes. So since I'm not going to be running fuel lines out of there, fuel lines are going to be going on top back to the fuel cell once we get that. So brake lines are coming out of there now, and I can just fasten these up to the frame rail. This will be nice. This is hidden. These are nice and tidy. So heck yeah, appreciate how good all this looks quick. And of course on the inside, this is also needs to be cleaned up quite a bit. Just got zip ties still hanging here, but they're gonna get hung up along the side here with the fuel rail, or yeah, fuel lines, and they just run obviously up to the firewall. So got the other left front one, you can kind of see it snaking through right there, or right front, snaking through all tucked up tight, so it shouldn't be an issue. And like I said, I'm just happy with how much this cleans up the engine bay. Not that it needs to, but it's just one of those things that we're already taking the time to redo a bunch of brake lines. Why not just do them all and route it nicely and make it look nice? So
the next day.
Been a very productive night again. So, if you didn't guess by now, I was making a rear firewall for the back of the car because we've talked about putting a fuel cell back there. And I'm actually quite amazed. The fuel cell came in like 4 days earlier than what it said when I ordered it, so that is awesome. I can get around to making mounts for this. This is just a little 12-gallon fuel cell. I believe it was 10 inches by 18, 12 high maybe, or maybe it was 12 by 12, 18. Don't fully remember, but 12-gallon fuel cell, and it's gonna work perfectly, I think, for what I want to do back here. So, gonna start mounting that this weekend, and just overall, you know, continue wrapping up the interior. Somehow try and stuff the back of the seat in here, because I really didn't take into consideration when I put that bar in that I wanted to keep the back seat. So that bar is extremely in the way. So whether I can trim my back seat to just go over it and hide it, or get it wedged underneath there, which I doubt will happen. I think it's gonna have to go over the top of it, which isn't a problem. I'll just cut the foam out and notch it to go around, and it might look like it has a weird bump, but it will at least have a complete interior, and that's what I want out of this. So gonna keep seeing what we can do, but overall, this finally got a firewall in here, so we can move forward with a lot of stuff. Also got the ends cut out for fuel lines to run back and the wiring harness to run back, so should be good. It's nice and solid in there. Got it bolted all the way around. Would be cool to do like a bead roll on it, but I don't know anyone with a bead roller, so, and I don't have any money to buy one. So that's what we're gonna work with, and that's kind of also why we're gonna hide it behind the seat. So no sense in making it too fancy, but I'm excited to actually start working on this trunk foley. I got a few ideas and things I want to play with and maybe mock up and test, but definitely gonna be fun. This is the last major part of the chassis work that needs to be done. So once we get this back end finished up, it is smooth sailing to the drivetrain. And I think I've got a lead on a BRZ transmission I'm gonna go look at this weekend. So this thing is looking like we have a chance of getting it together for Automotion. Got my fingers crossed, but that only does you so good. Just gotta stay positive and keep moving along on it, and with any good luck, this thing's gonna make it. So gonna keep trucking along here.